At home with a lifetime of stories and songs, people we've met and the places we've gone. Along the way found where and how we belong. At home with a lifetime of stories and songs. Welcome to more Songs and Stories from Home, podcasts that give voice to songs with stories and stories with songs written and being written over the course of a lifetime, often illuminating the journey we all make, together and alone, finding our way home. 1968, Part 6. It was late November or early December when the phone rang. It was Dick Foley of the Brothers Four wondering if I had time to meet with him and the other two guys. I did. So we did. Downstairs at Dick's house. One of the walls was decorated with photos of Mercury and Gemini space flights and autographed pictures of the astronauts who were part of those missions. After some casual conversation, we picked up instruments, formed a small circle, and began to sing. When we were singing Green Leaves of Summer, I remember thinking, wow, we sound just like the Brothers Four. When they asked if I'd be interested in joining them, I think I simply said, very. They responded by saying they'd get back to me the next weekend. Friday came and went. Saturday the same. By Sunday evening, I was all over the place, ending up on the floor listening to a Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons album, over and over and over, before the phone call finally came, saying I'd gotten the job. That Christmas Eve, 3 Apollo astronauts circling the moon read the creation story from the book of Genesis, sharing it with the world. When I think about that, I remember a Brothers Four concert in Austria. In 2002, our host who introduced us, Gerhard Teufel, describing how an Apollo astronaut he'd heard speak talked about the otherworldly wonder of going to the moon. Gerhard finished his introduction by saying, "Tonight, with the help of the Brothers Four, I am going to the moon," which I imagine describes as well as anything how I was feeling at the end of 1968. It was a year like other years, the worst and best of times. 12 months that tried our souls and tried our hearts and minds. That brought us to the future we are living to this day. The peril and the promise that was 1968. And then, sometime the end of November, early December, the phone rang. It was Dick Foley, the Brothers Four. I'd been trying to meet him for a long time to see if he had any advice on getting into show business. It's still kind of an idea. And he called and he said, come over, see if he can come over, and he'd like me to meet the guys, the other two guys. He'd like to introduce me. And so he arrived in his Lincoln town car at the fraternity. He picked me up and went to his house in Medina. And there was Dick and Bob and John. And we talked. And he had, I brought a guitar over and did some singing and did some more talking, and I had brought a banjo over and played the banjo, and he said, yeah, the only other guy that's ever played banjo without finger picks, which I did at that time, he said, was Mike Kirkland, the guy that was our, and talked a little bit more, and as fate would have it, the Brothers Four had a gig in Lake City in the middle of January, and they needed to find somebody to replace Mike Kirkland. The last job that they'd done was in the Bahamas. The four original guys, and at that time Mike Kirkland had flown from the Bahamas to Phoenix, where he was living, and the other three guys were flying home, and they decided they'd stop in Minneapolis on their way home. This was in late September, in the fall, and they had and they stopped by, and a friend, quite acquaintance of theirs, a guy that they'd sort of helped get into show business, helped Joan become part of the Mitchell Trio, the Chad Mitchell Trio, was there, and he was, at that time, this fellow was living with his in-laws, was in debt, and was looking for a job, and they asked him if he'd like to join and become the fourth member of the Brothers Four, and he was shocked. He was surprised that they were making any changes, but he said he'd think about it and he'd get back to him a few weeks. As it turned out, a few weeks turned out into a few more weeks, and now we're getting into September, and this job's starting to look closer and closer, and the need for another person to be standing there is important. And I as John Lennon said, I think we might have passed the audition, because a few weeks later, or a few days, well, actually, they said after we talked and I'd done some singing at Dick's house with the other guys, they said, well, we'll get back to you. And it's the 10th of December or so, and they said we're going to go get Christmas trees and some property we own down south, and then we'll call you. And so I expected maybe Friday, Saturday. Well, we got to Sunday night, and I didn't drink really in college, but I had a few drinks on Sunday night, had a few beers, and I remember putting on an album of the Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, and just kind of getting in that place and hoping that the phone would ring, wondering what was going to happen, and the phone did ring, and it was Dick saying, "Well, we got those Christmas trees. Sorry to get back to you so late, but we'd like you to come aboard." And so next thing I know is that Dick's picking me up again at the fraternity, and this time he's driving his station wagon, which was the car that he owned. He said, "Yeah, the Lincoln Tar car, that was my father-in-law's." And so I got in the station wagon, went to his house, and we were rehearsing. It's January now, and phone rings, and I found out later that it was John Denver, the fellow they'd known, that they talked to in Minnesota, and he was calling to tell him that he wanted the job. And Dick Foley had to tell him, sorry, we got our guy, and too late. You've called too late. So he went on course, but he did okay. But then a few weeks later, the Brothers Four are down in Los Angeles, and we're making what turned out to be the final Columbia record. The Brothers Four had signed 2 5-year contracts with Columbia Records, and this was the ninth, the beginning of that 10th year, and it turned out to be the final album, and they were looking for material, and one of the songs that we chose to record was "Let's Get Together," and the version that we used, or the arrangement we used, was the Morning Ride version that I'd recorded earlier, 1 year before, with the guys I'd sung with in college, and it was a pretty amazing thing to look 12 months and all the changes. And in fact I was feeling kind of amazed to be standing at this place where not only was at the doorway, but now I'm walking through that door, not only standing at the window with my nose pressed against the glass, but I'm about to get to the other side. And so I'm feeling that I can kind of laugh at myself a little bit. And so we're sitting at Schwab's drugstore during the recording bits when we're at a break from the recording down and we're in LA. And so I figure I could tell this story on myself. So I'm talking to the other three guys, and I explained that when I first went to New York and I first ordered a hot pastrami sandwich, I knew nothing about kosher. I knew nothing about, but I ordered a hot pastrami sandwich, and the fellow said, "What do you want on it?" I said, "I'd like mayonnaise." So the guy, as loud a voice as he could possibly have, he yelled down the to this friend. He said, "Hey, Joe, this guy wants to order a hot pastrami with mayonnaise." And man, I just shrunk down to this. But now I'm in LA telling this story about, now, so, and everybody's, and then out of nowhere comes the waitress, and she kind of leans in to us and she said, "You see those guys back there at the counter?" She says, "Those are the kind of guys that would come in here and order hot pastrami with mayonnaise." Well, the guys just disappeared under their seats. I wanted to disappear under my seat, and but in a certain way, you just kind of realize, haven't. And I realized how much and how far I had to go from that amazing place that I was starting from. And so in January of 1969, in the songs that the Brothers Four recorded in Los Angeles, one of the songs, the Morning Ride had recorded a year earlier in the big room, and it was called "Let's Get Together." And it turned out that was the title song of the last Columbia record recorded by the Brothers Four. Let's Get Together.
Love is but a song we sing, fear away we die. You can make the mountains ring or hear the angels cry. Though the dove is on the wing, you need not know why. Hey people now, smile on your brothers, let me see you get together. Try to love one another right now. Some will come and some will go, and we shall surely find. We shall find when the one who left us here returns for us at last. We are but a moment's sunlight fading on the grass. Hey people now, smile on your brothers, let me see you get together. Try to love one another right now. And if you hear the song I'm singing, you will understand. You hold the key to love and fear, all in your trembling hand. When he unlocks them both, you know it's at your command. Hey, people now, smile, let me see you get together. Try to love one another right now. Hey, people now, smile, let me see you get together. Try to love one another right now. Hey, people now, smile, let me.
Thank you for watching or listening to more songs and stories from home. Come back next time for part 1 of Because of the Brothers Four. Knowing you're welcome here, at home with a lifetime of stories and songs.
See